The transmission came at dinner time. 40,000 colonists on Eridu 7 were sitting with their families, eating food grown from alien soil, when every screen on the moon flickered to the same image. A Kesani face filled the display. Blue-gray skin stretched over a skull shaped like a teardrop. 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Behind the alien, dozens more worked at stations on what appeared to be a massive ship. "Humans of Eridu 7, the alien said. "I am Ambassador Yulani of the Kesani Merchant Consortium. You are occupying territory that was allocated to our people 300 years ago. You have 30 standard days to evacuate. Failure to comply will result in commercial correction." Governor Diane Okonkwo stood in her office, watching the broadcast with her staff. She was a tall woman with gray hair and steady hands. 20 years of colonial administration had taught her patience. "What exactly is commercial correction?" she asked. Her aide, a young man named Ravi, pulled up the galactic database. "Total economic blockade, no ships in or out, then forced removal if we don't leave." "Have they done this before?" "Hundreds of times. The Galactic Commerce Tribunal backs them. They control most of the trade routes in this sector." Okonkwo nodded slowly. She looked out her window at the colony below, simple buildings, gardens, a school where children were probably finishing their homework. These people had left Earth 5 years ago to build something new. They had worked hard. They had sacrificed. She was not going to tell them to leave. "Get me a line to Earth," she said. The message took 4 hours to reach home and another 4 hours for the response to arrive. When it came, it was only 6 words from the United Earth Council. "Hold position, assistance incoming." Ravi read it 3 times. "That's it. What kind of assistance? We're 50 light-years from the nearest Earth outpost." Okonkwo allowed herself a small smile. "I don't know, but I trust them." Ambassador Yulani received no response to his ultimatum. This confused him. In his experience, species always responded. They begged. They bargained. They offered resources or territory or political favors. The dance was familiar and profitable. But the humans said nothing. Days passed. Yulani sent more messages. He explained the legal framework. He described the consequences. He even offered reduced evacuation fees as a gesture of goodwill. Silence. 3 weeks into the 30-day deadline, Yulani's patience ended. He called in the blockade fleet. 200 Kesani trading vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded Eridu 7. Each ship was massive, designed to carry millions of tons of cargo across the galaxy. Together, they formed a wall of metal around the small human moon. Yulani broadcast to the colony again. "This is your final warning. You have 7 days. If you do not begin evacuation, we will commence removal operations." On the surface, Governor Okonkwo gathered her people in the central plaza. She stood on a small platform and looked at their faces. Miners, farmers, teachers, engineers, families who had given up everything for a new life. "Earth told us to hold," she said simply, "so we hold." "Against 200 ships," someone shouted. "Yes." "With what?" Okonkwo did not have an answer. She only had faith. That night she sat alone in her office, watching the blockade ships circle overhead like patient predators. She thought about her daughter back on Earth. She thought about the weight of 40,000 lives. Then her console beeped. A new contact had entered the system. Okonkwo pulled up the sensor data. Something had dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Something the Kesani sensors couldn't identify. Something that wasn't in any galactic database. It was moving fast, very fast. Ravi burst into her office, eyes wide. "Governor, we're getting a transponder signal. It's human." "What ship?" Ravi swallowed. "The UES Consequence." Okonkwo had never heard of it. She searched the public registries. The entry was minimal. Displacement sufficient. Weapons systems not listed. Crew complement adequate. "What does that mean?" Ravi asked. Okonkwo watched the single dot on her screen move toward the blockade fleet. One ship against 200. It should have been suicide. But something in her chest unclenched. Something that had been tight for 3 weeks finally relaxed. It means, she said quietly, that Earth didn't negotiate. Above Eridu 7, Ambassador Yulani saw the contact too. His tactical officer reported that the unknown vessel would reach their position in 6 hours. One ship, Yulani said dismissively. They sent one ship. His officer hesitated. Ambassador, we cannot identify its design. It doesn't match any known configuration. It doesn't matter, we have 200 vessels. What can one ship possibly do? The officer had no answer. 6 hours later, they would find out. No one in the galaxy had ever seen a human warship before. There was a simple reason for this. Humans had only been traveling among the stars for 50 years. They were new. They were small. They were, by galactic standards, irrelevant. The Kesani had been trading across the stars for 3,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched species evolve from primitive creatures to interstellar powers. They knew how the galaxy worked. The galaxy worked through commerce, through negotiation, through carefully balanced agreements that benefited everyone with enough money to matter. Violence was primitive. Violence was wasteful. Violence was something lesser species did before they learned better. The consequence did not look like a trading vessel. It was black, not painted black, but built from materials that absorbed light and gave nothing back. Its shape was angular and wrong, like something designed to hurt just by existing. Where Kesani ships were smooth and elegant, this thing was brutal, purposeful. Every line spoke of a single intent. Ambassador Yulani studied the approaching vessel from his command deck. Around him, 200 ships waited in formation, the largest trading fleet assembled in this sector in 50 years. "Hail them," he ordered. His communications officer sent the standard greeting. Frequency, identification request, diplomatic protocols. "Nothing. They're ignoring us," the officer said. "Send again." "Nothing." 6 hours of nothing. The human ship crossed the system at speeds that made Yulani's navigators nervous. It should have taken days. It took hours. Then finally a response. The face that appeared on Yulani's screen was human. Dark skin, shaved head, eyes that looked at him like he was a problem to be solved. "I am Captain Ajora Nwasu of the United Earth Ship Consequence," the human said. "You are blockading a human colony." Yulani straightened. Finally, diplomacy could begin. "Yes, Captain. I am Ambassador Yulani of the Kesani Merchant Consortium. I'm pleased we can discuss this matter. The Galactic Commerce Tribunal has ruled that this territory belongs to. This colony is under Earth's protection." Yulani paused. "Yes, I understand your position, but the legal framework clearly states. You have 12 hours to withdraw." "Captain, please, there are processes. Arbitration, we can negotiate compensation. Perhaps a shared mining agreement would." "There will be no negotiation." The transmission ended. Yulani sat in silence for a long moment. His officers exchanged confused glances. This was not how things worked. This was not how anything worked. "Ambassador," his tactical officer asked carefully, "what do we do?" "She's bluffing," Yulani said, but his voice was uncertain. "She has one ship, we have 200. What can she possibly threaten?" On Eridu 7, Governor Okonkwo listened to the same transmission. Captain Nwasu's words echoed in her office. 12 hours, no negotiation. She had never met this captain. She had never heard of this ship. But those 17 words told her everything she needed to know about who Earth had sent. Ravi was pale. "Governor, shouldn't there be more ships, more diplomacy, more something?" Okonkwo shook her head slowly. "Earth knows what it's doing." "How can you be sure?" She pointed at her screen. The consequence hung in space, a single black shape against the glittering formation of Kesani vessels. It should have looked weak. It should have looked hopeless. It didn't. Look at that ship, she said. Really look at it. Ravi studied the image. The consequence was smaller than most of the Kesani vessels. It had no cargo bays, no passenger sections, no elegant curves or commercial markings. It's a weapon, he whispered. Yes. The whole ship, it's just a weapon. Okonkwo nodded. The Kesani build ships to carry things, to trade, to make profit. They put weapons on their ships the way you might put a lock on a door, just in case. She zoomed in on the consequence. Its hull was covered in systems she couldn't identify, tubes and ports and panels that served no commercial purpose. Humans didn't build that ship to carry anything, she said. They built it to fight, only to fight. Every inch of it exists for one reason. What reason? Okonkwo thought about her daughter back on Earth. She thought about the 40,000 people sleeping in their beds below her, trusting that tomorrow would come. To protect us, she said simply. That's all it does, that's all it needs to do. 12 hours, the countdown had begun. Ambassador Yulani paced his command deck as the hours passed. He had sent 7 more messages to the human ship. Offers, threats, explanations of galactic law. Captain Enwasu responded to none of them. This is madness, he muttered. They cannot seriously expect to fight us. His tactical officer approached carefully. Ambassador, I've been analyzing the human vessel. And I cannot identify its weapons systems. The configuration doesn't match anything in our database. Yulani waved dismissively. Because they're new, because they're primitive, they probably have basic projectile systems, maybe some energy weapons, nothing that could threaten a fleet this size. The officer hesitated. Ambassador, I'm not certain that's true. Why? Because, he struggled for words, because looking at that ship makes me afraid, and I don't know why. Yulani turned away. Fear was for lesser species. The Kesani controlled the trade routes. They controlled the tribunal. They controlled the galaxy itself. What could one human ship possibly do? 12 light-years away, High Arbiter Malek received an urgent transmission from Ambassador Yulani. Malek was old. His species lived for centuries, and he had spent 200 years mediating disputes for the Galactic Commerce Tribunal. He had seen everything. Or so he thought. The humans refused to negotiate, Yulani said. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress. They sent one ship, one, and they demand we withdraw in 12 hours. Malek leaned back in his chair. His office was filled with trophies from successful arbitrations. Contracts, treaties, agreements that had shaped galactic commerce for generations. Have you offered compensation? He asked. Of course. Mining rights. Yes. Territorial concessions elsewhere. They won't even respond. The captain simply said there would be no negotiation, nothing else. Malek was quiet for a moment. Humans, he knew very little about them. A young species, barely 50 years in space, no significant trade presence, no political power. Let me look into this, he said. I will contact you shortly. After Yulani's image disappeared, Malek accessed the tribunal's restricted archives. Every species in the galaxy had a file. Most were simple: trade history, political structure, cultural notes. The human file was different. It was classified at the highest level. Malek had to use authorization codes he hadn't touched in decades. When the file finally opened, he understood why. The first page was a timeline of human history before spaceflight. Malek read it slowly, his old hearts beating faster with each line. They had fought each other constantly, not disputes over resources or territory that other species experienced. Real wars, massive wars, conflicts that killed millions of their own kind in single events. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. Not once, but many times over. They had aimed these weapons at each other and lived under the threat of total destruction for generations. And then somehow they had survived. They had taken those same weapons, the same science that created them, and they had reached for the stars. Malik scrolled further. The file contained analysis from first contact specialists, psychological profiles, threat assessments. One section was highlighted in red, a warning added by an analyst whose name had been removed. Humanity does not view conflict as a failure of diplomacy. They view diplomacy as a temporary delay before inevitable conflict. Do not mistake their politeness for weakness. Do not mistake their patience for fear. When a human says there will be no negotiation, they mean exactly that. They have already decided what will happen. They are simply giving you time to accept it. Malik read the warning twice, then a third time. He thought about the Cassani fleet, 200 trading vessels, huge, impressive, designed to carry cargo and intimidate through sheer size. Then he thought about what he had just read, a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to kill, a species that had built weapons of total destruction and pointed them at their own kind, a species that had survived only because they were better at violence than anyone else. What kind of ship would such a species build? Malik opened a direct channel to Ambassador Yulani. His voice was urgent in a way it had never been before. "Withdraw," he said, "now, immediately." Yulani's face showed shock. "High Arbiter, I have accessed the files on humanity. You must withdraw your fleet. We have 200 ships, they have one. It doesn't matter." Yulani's expression hardened. The tribunal has never lost a commercial correction. Never in 300 years. We are the Cassani. We control the trade routes. We control the galaxy. You control commerce, Malik said quietly. They control violence. These are not the same thing. One ship cannot. Ambassador, listen to me. Humans did not build that ship to trade. They did not build it to negotiate. They built it to destroy. Arbitration. We can negotiate compensation. Perhaps a shared mining agreement would. There will be no negotiation. The transmission ended. Yulani sat in silence for a long moment. His officers exchanged confused glances. This was not how things worked. This was not how anything worked. Ambassador, his tactical officer asked carefully, "What do we do?" "She's bluffing," Yulani said, but his voice was uncertain. "She has one ship, we have 200. What can she possibly threaten?" On Eridu 7, Governor Okonkwo listened to the same transmission. Captain Nwasu's words echoed in her office. 12 hours, no negotiation. She had never met this captain. She had never heard of this ship. But those 17 words told her everything she needed to know about who Earth had sent. Ravi was pale. "Governor, shouldn't there be more ships, more diplomacy, more something?" Okonkwo shook her head slowly. "Earth knows what it's doing." "How can you be sure?" She pointed at her screen. The consequence hung in space, a single black shape against the glittering formation of Cassani vessels. It should have looked weak. It should have looked hopeless. It didn't. "Look at that ship," she said. "Really look at it." Ravi studied the image. The consequence was smaller than most of the Cassani vessels. It had no cargo bays, no passenger sections, no elegant curves or commercial markings. "It's a weapon," he whispered. "Yes. The whole ship, it's just a weapon." Okonkwo nodded. The Cassani build ships to carry things, to trade, to make profit. They put weapons on their ships the way you might put a lock on a door, just in case. She zoomed in on the consequence. Its hull was covered in systems she couldn't identify, tubes and ports and panels that served no commercial purpose. "Humans didn't build that ship to carry anything," she said. "They built it to fight, only to fight. Every inch of it exists for one reason." "What reason?" Okonkwo thought about her daughter back on Earth. She thought about the 40,000 people sleeping in their beds below her, trusting that tomorrow would come. "To protect us," she said simply. "That's all it does, that's all it needs to do." 12 hours, the countdown had begun. Ambassador Yulani paced his command deck as the hours passed. He had sent 7 more messages to the human ship. Offers, threats, explanations of galactic law. Captain Enwasu responded to none of them. This, something not because anyone expected to use them. Engagement time. If they hold formation, 11 minutes, maybe 12 if they scatter effectively. Navigator Fatima Al-Rashid spoke from her station. She was young, barely 30, but her hands were steady on the controls. Captain, I've plotted withdrawal corridors for the enemy fleet. Enwasu raised an eyebrow. Withdrawal corridors. Yes, ma'am. If they run in these directions, they'll clear our engagement zone and survive. If they run toward the colony, they won't. The captain considered this. You're plotting escape routes for the people threatening our colony. Yes, ma'am. Why? Al-Rashid met her captain's eyes. Because they're merchants. They're not soldiers. Most of them probably have families somewhere. If they're smart enough to run, they should have somewhere to run to. Enwasu was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Broadcast the corridors to the Kesani fleet. Ma'am, you heard me. Send them the escape routes. Tell them these are their survival paths. Use them. Andrew looked up from his station. Captain, we're giving away our engagement strategy. We're giving them a chance to live, Enwasu replied. What they do with it is their choice. The message went out. On 200 Kesani ships, captains received detailed navigation data showing exactly how to escape if combat began. Ambassador Yulani read the transmission with growing unease. The humans weren't hiding their intentions. They weren't bluffing. They were telling his fleet exactly what would happen and exactly how to avoid it. Who did that? Who gave their enemy a map to safety before a battle? Someone who was absolutely certain of victory. On Eridu 7, Governor Okonkwo watched the hours tick down. The colonists had gathered in the central plaza again. 40,000 people looking up at the sky, waiting to learn their fate. A young girl tugged at Okonkwo's sleeve. Governor, are we going to be okay? Okonkwo knelt down to meet the child's eyes. What's your name? Amara. Well, Amara, do you see that ship up there, the dark one? The girl squinted at the sky. The consequence was visible as a small black shape against the stars. I see it. That ship came from Earth. It crossed 50 light years to be here. Do you know why? Amara shook her head. Because we asked for help, and Earth always helps family. But there's only one ship. The aliens have so many. Okonkwo smiled. Sometimes one is enough. 4 hours remained. Ambassador Yulani had stopped pacing. He sat in his command chair watching the human vessel hold position. It hadn't moved, it hadn't fired, it simply waited. The escape routes haunted him. His tactical officer approached. Ambassador, several captains are requesting permission to withdraw. Denied. Sir, they're frightened. The human transmission. I said denied, we hold position. But doubt had taken root. The arbiter's warning echoed in his mind. The files on human history. The weapons they had built to use against each other. Yulani had risen through Kesani ranks by never showing weakness, by never retreating, by winning through sheer stubborn presence. He had never faced an enemy who didn't want anything from him. The humans hadn't demanded payment. They hadn't requested negotiations. They hadn't asked for territory or resources or political concessions. They had simply said, leave. 2 hours remained. On the consequence, Captain Enwasu reviewed her crew's readiness reports. Every system was optimal, every weapon charged, every crew member at their station. Captain, Andrew said quietly, they're not going to withdraw, are they? Probably not. They don't understand what they're facing. Enwasu looked at the tactical display. 200 orange dots surrounding her single blue one. It should have been terrifying, it should have been hopeless. But she had grown up on Earth. She had studied human history. She knew what her species was capable of. They'll learn, she said, one way or another. The timer continued to count down. On Eridu 7, colonists held their children close. On the Kesani flagship, Ambassador Yulani gripped his command chair. On the consequence, Captain Nwasu watched the clock with patient eyes. 2 hours, then 1 hour, then 30 minutes. The galaxy was about to receive a lesson in what humans did to protect their own. 2 hours before the deadline, Ambassador Yulani made his decision. He would not retreat. He would not be remembered as the Kasani who ran from a single ship. But he also would not attack first. That would give the humans a diplomatic advantage. Instead, he chose a middle path, a show of strength, a reminder of who held the numbers. "Send 3 ships forward," he ordered. "Have them advance to within visual range of the human vessel, standard formation, no weapons charged." His tactical officer hesitated. "Ambassador, the human escape routes show that approach corridor as a primary engagement zone." "We're not attacking, we're asserting presence. It's a standard intimidation protocol. We've done it 1,000 times." 3 Kasani vessels broke formation and moved toward the consequence. They were massive ships, each one carrying enough cargo to supply a small planet. Their hulls gleamed in the starlight as they approached the dark human vessel. On the consequence, Lieutenant Commander Andrew tracked the incoming ships. 3 contacts advancing, no weapons hot. They're trying to intimidate us. Captain Nwasu watched the display calmly. Range: 40,000 kilometers and closing. Time to our engagement zone: 6 minutes. Nwasu opened a channel to the approaching ships. "Kasani vessels, you are entering a restricted area. Reverse course immediately." No response. The ships continued forward. Nwasu closed the channel. She looked at Andrew. "If they enter the zone, put a round through the lead ship's engine block. Nothing else, make it clean." "Understood." On the lead Kasani vessel, Captain Voss watched the human ship grow larger in his view screen. It was smaller than his vessel, much smaller. How could something so small threaten an entire fleet? His sensors showed no weapons charging, no shields activating. The human ship just sat there waiting. Voss smiled. The humans were bluffing. They had to be. "Continue approach," he ordered. 20,000 kilometers, 10,000, 5,000. The consequence fired. Voss never saw the projectile. It traveled too fast for his sensors to track. One moment his engines were functioning normally. The next moment they simply weren't. The round punched through his engine block like it wasn't there. No explosion, no fire, just a hole where critical systems used to be. His ship went dark, tumbling slowly in the vacuum. The other 2 Kasani vessels veered away instantly, their captains screaming into their communicators. On the flagship, Ambassador Yulani watched in shock. The human ship had fired once, and his vessel was dead in space. Captain Nwasu's voice came through every speaker in the fleet. "That was your warning. The next 11 minutes will not include warnings." Chaos erupted among the Kasani. 200 ships that had never faced real combat suddenly realized they were facing something they didn't understand. Captains demanded orders. Officers shouted questions. Fear spread like fire through dry grass. Ambassador Yulani tried to restore order. "Hold formation, we still outnumber them. 1 ship cannot." His voice was drowned out by the sound of ships breaking away. Merchants, not soldiers. Traders, not warriors. They had signed contracts for profit margins and retirement plans, not for combat with a species that had spent its entire history perfecting violence. The escape routes the humans had broadcast suddenly looked very appealing. Ships began running. First 1, then 5, then 20. They followed the corridors the consequence had provided, racing away from the colony and the dark ship that had crippled a vessel with a single shot. On Eridu 7, Governor Okonkwo watched the blockade dissolve. The tactical display in her office showed orange dots fleeing in every direction. The organized formation had become a scattered mess of panicked merchants trying to escape. "They're running," Ravi breathed. "They're actually running." Okonkwo said nothing. She watched the single blue dot at the center of the chaos. The consequence hadn't moved. It didn't chase, it didn't fire again, it simply waited while the fleet tore itself apart in terror. 100 ships fled, then 150, then 180. Ambassador Yulani stood alone on his command deck. Most of his crew had abandoned their posts. His tactical displays showed only 13 ships remaining, his personal escort, and a handful of captains too proud or too slow to run. He opened a direct channel to the human ship. His voice shook with something he had never felt before. "What do you want?" Captain Enwasu's response was immediate. "Nothing. We don't want anything from you. We want you to leave." "You could have destroyed us, all of us. Why didn't you?" There was a pause. When Enwasu spoke again, her voice was almost gentle. "Because you're not our enemy. You're just people who made a mistake. The people on that colony are our family. We came here to protect them, not to kill you." "Then why the ultimatum? Why the threats?" "Because protecting family isn't negotiable. It never has been. It never will be. We gave you 12 hours because we hoped you would understand. Some of you did, some of you didn't, but we weren't going to let you hurt our people. Period." Yulani looked at the crippled ship drifting nearby. The humans had disabled it without killing. The crew, they had broadcast escape routes before the fighting started. They had offered mercy at every turn. And they had been ready to destroy everything if mercy was refused. "We're leaving," he said quietly, "all of us. That's all we ever wanted." The remaining Kesani ships turned and fled. Ambassador Yulani's vessel was the last to go. 3 days after the Kesani fled, the Galactic Commerce Tribunal held an emergency session. 12 species gathered in their Great Hall, a chamber that had hosted negotiations for 300 years. Disputes were settled here. Trade routes were assigned here. The fate of entire worlds was decided here. Today, they would discuss humanity. High Arbiter Moloch stood before the assembly. He looked tired. The past week had aged him. "You have all received the reports," he said. "A single human warship faced 200 of our trading vessels. It fired one shot, and our fleet scattered like frightened animals." The chamber was silent. "I have accessed the restricted files on humanity. I recommend you all do the same. What you will find is disturbing." He activated a display. Human history scrolled across the screen. Wars, weapons, centuries of conflict that made galactic disputes look like minor disagreements. "They spent their entire existence fighting each other," Moloch continued. "They built weapons capable of destroying their planet. They pointed those weapons at their own cities, their own children, their own future, and somehow, impossibly, they survived." A Kesani representative spoke up. "They are barbaric, primitive. This only proves they should be contained." "Contained?" Moloch almost laughed. "With what? Our trading fleets, our merchant vessels with their decorative weapons. You saw what one of their ships did. One, they have hundreds, maybe thousands. We don't know because they've never shown us." The chamber fell silent again. "We have spent 300 years building an empire of commerce," Moloch said. "We have forgotten what violence looks like. We have forgotten that some species don't want to negotiate, don't want to trade, don't want anything except to protect what belongs to them." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I move that the tribunal formally recognize all human territorial claims without negotiation, without fees, without arbitration, effective immediately." The vote was unanimous. On Eridu 7, life returned to normal. Surprising speed. The colonists went back to their mines, their farms, their schools. Children played in the streets. Families ate dinner together. Governor Okonkwo sent a formal message of thanks to Captain Enwasu. The response was brief. "No thanks necessary, your family." The consequence remained in orbit for 3 more days. During that time, Captain Enwasu made one visit to the surface. She came alone, wearing a simple uniform, carrying nothing. Governor Okonkwo met her at the landing pad. The 2 women shook hands. "You saved us," Okonkwo said. 40,000 people owe you their lives." "I did my job," Enwasu replied. "Nothing more." They walked through the colony together. Colonists stopped to stare. Some waved, some cheered. Enwasu acknowledged them with small nods but kept her face neutral. They visited the school. Children gathered around, asking questions about her ship, about Earth, about the battle in space. A young girl named Amara pushed through the crowd. "You're the captain?" she asked. "I am." "Were you scared when you faced all those ships?" Enwasu knelt down to meet the child's eyes. "No." "Why not? There were so many of them." "Because I knew something they didn't." Amara leaned closer. "What?" "I knew that every person on this colony matters to Earth, every single one. The old miners who work the deep shafts, the teachers who run this school, the farmers growing food in alien soil, your parents, your friends, you." She paused. "Earth doesn't negotiate because negotiation implies we might accept something other than our people being safe. And we won't. Ever. There's no price they could pay, no threat they could make, no argument that would change our minds." Amara thought about this. Her small face was serious. "So you'd fight the whole galaxy?" Enwasu smiled. It was the first real smile she had shown since arriving. "We'd fight anyone," she said. "We'd fight anything. We'd fight gods themselves if we had to, because that's what family does." She stood and looked around at the gathered colonists. Miners with calloused hands, teachers with patient eyes, children with curious faces. "You left Earth to build something new," she said. "You crossed 50 light years to make a home among the stars. That took courage, that took faith, and Earth will never forget it. No matter how far you go, no matter how long you're gone, you're still ours, you're still family." Governor Okonkwo felt tears on her cheeks but didn't wipe them away. The next morning, the Consequence broke orbit and headed back toward Earth space. Governor Okonkwo watched it go, a dark shape against the endless stars. In the galactic records, the incident was logged simply as "dispute resolved, no casualties, human intervention." But every species that read that report understood what it really meant. Earth didn't negotiate because Earth didn't need to. Their people were non-negotiable. Their family was non-negotiable. Their resolve was absolute. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity that day. Not that they were strong, not that they were violent, not that they were dangerous. They had learned that humans loved fiercely and protected completely. That the bonds between them stretched across light years and generations. That threatening a human colony wasn't a diplomatic matter or a commercial dispute. It was a declaration of war against everyone who had ever called Earth home. And Earth always answered.